Welcome to the Primal Show with your host, myself, Heath Squier, and today's guest, Casey Thaler, and he is a certified personal trainer, a nutrition coach, author, and writer for many different sites out there like Greatest, the Paleo Magazine, the Paleo Diet. The list kind of goes on and on. Very excited to have him on the show. I don't know, probably not a lot of people know about you yet, but I think based on your busy schedule, I think they're going to know about you very soon, and I'm very glad to promote what you're doing here on the Primal Show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into the paleo diet and what you're up to right now.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I've followed your stuff for a long time, so it's an honor to be here. And I've watched some of the other shows, so it's just kind of nice to be on. So,
Awesome.
well, man, I have, I guess, a pretty long, interesting story. I'll try to sum it up as quickly as I can. So I was a certified personal trainer, National Academy of Sports Medicine. I was really into that. I had about 85 personal training clients at the time, and I was really into nutrition, or I thought I was really into nutrition at least. And I got my certification for that to become a fitness nutrition specialist. And all of a sudden, I found out that everybody in the world has questions about nutrition. And once you get like something like that, or you move into as soon as you're publicly like known as a nutrition person, you end up getting like the floodgates open, and like everybody and like their relatives and everybody has questions for you. So
Sure.
I actually met the person I started my first business with through that avenue, because she was going to the same gym that I was training out of, and she is a molecular biology PhD, and she was very into nutrition and CrossFit and all that. Was like a certified CrossFit coach and everything. And we just sort of branched off into our own venture and did like our own company and did personal training, nutrition, website, all that stuff, writing. And from that, I just we were both kind of control freaks, so we actually ended up going our own separate ways, because there was almost like too many things we wanted to do separately, and like it was hard to agree on a lot of stuff. And I'm sure you know how it goes. A lot of
Oh, yeah.
people know that. And I actually just started by writing to the editor of Paleo Magazine and said, "Hey, do you guys want any writers? Are you hiring?" Basically asking for a job, because I was doing my own website and training people still a little bit, and but I was really looking to branch out, and I'm thinking, oh well, there's no way he'll reply, and like that it would be a nice thing, but I'm not really gonna think that's gonna happen. And like less than 20 minutes later, he replied with like a really awesome, like interested email, and I was kind of just like taken aback for a minute, and I guess I just started through there, and the same thing sort of happened with Dr. Cordain, where I just wrote like a guest piece for them asking if they wanted any content, and they loved it, and they asked me to write for them every week. So yeah, I've gotten sort of like out of nowhere. I went from being like somebody that like nobody knew who I was like at all, to like now I have all these amazing opportunities, and I've written like actually 5 books. 4 of them are going to come out, and it's just been incredible and sort of like mind-blowing how fast some of it's happened, and like I haven't had time to really process some of it, or any time off or anything, and so it's been really cool. But I guess I found the paleo diet through my old business partner, and I was already eating, like the standard American diet, like bodybuilding diet, which everybody thinks is like super healthy, and was really lean and in pretty good shape and everything. But I was just blown away, because like little things went away, like my allergies went away, and like I was sleeping better, and like I was performing better, and I got even leaner and more muscular. So it was great. But I wasn't a believer at first. I actually was pretty skeptical. So, and then I read some of Dr. Cordain's papers actually, and that sort of changed my mind a little bit too. If you have the diligence to sit there and read through all those papers in detail, I think it makes people appreciate what's going on a little bit more. So.
Yeah, I always say,
Answer.
just because you have a six-pack doesn't make you healthy, but, because a lot of guys, we're just bombarded with muscle fitness magazines. A lot of bodybuilders are using steroids and so forth, and they have extremely high blood pressure. So even though they have this great anabolic look to themselves, they're extremely unhealthy, and sure, they cycle off and they give their body a break, but they're what I'm really into nowadays is how do you boost your testosterone level into the 7 and 800s, and which is really that ideal kind of anabolic range. I would really say the high end of 800, 830, something like that. And how do you do it naturally? Sure, you can exercise and you get rid of the excess fat that's going to help boost your testosterone. But how as a normal guy without supplementing or taking hormone replacement therapy, which is so prevalent now, which is really just due to people being overweight. I think it's like, oh, I'm overweight, my testosterone's low, but that's because your estrogen level's through the roof and you have excess fat. And so, I actually met with the head of endocrinology at Kaiser, and I was like, I love bouncing questions off of the endocrinologists because they're always really lean and really just fit, and because they know how hormones work. And what this guy said is eat broccoli, drop the fat, your testosterone level is going to come back up. And I started doing some research on how to push down the estrogen level and how to naturally boost testosterone. And I don't know if you have any experience with this, but I found two things right now. Tonkat Ali, which is long jack, which is a root. Horny goatweed is another one to really push levels up. And then there's things like indole 3 carbinol. There's just some great natural anti-estrogen to push down the estrogen level and push up the testosterone. And because the reason this is so important, I feel, is because people lack motivation to get in the gym in the first place. I mean, what do you think about that? Because I just feel that America is just such a mess with our hormones. And I look at people and I was like, man, only if that guy knew how easily he could get rid of his man boobs, and he would feel so much better. And I don't mean to pick on people, but I legitimately want to help people, because I found this out for myself. And I found it out because my dad was overweight. He carried a lot of weight in his stomach, and his hormones were out of whack, and that really sent me on this path. What do you think of this?
There's so much there I want to tackle. So firstly, I wouldn't say he was an early client, but one of the people I had, like, fairly early on, was actually a really interesting guy. I've had so many interesting people to work with, and that really helps you learn a lot of things quickly too, seeing it in real life. He used to play professional baseball for, I won't give his name obviously, but like two really big teams, and he would tell me how like the first thing they did when they got up from the minor leagues to the majors was like, okay, you go down that hallway and everybody basically just gets injected. Like it was just steroids. In the mid 90s, that was just like what you did. So he was able to get away with he made like a ton of money and all this stuff, and he blew through a lot of it because his lifestyle was so poor, but he was able to get away with it because he was on steroids. So like basically anything he did, he would still be relatively okay. And then what happened was when he retired and got off of steroids and everything, his body just got so out of whack and like went into this horrible situation, and his cholesterol was really high, his testosterone was like a 15-year-old girl, and like he kind of came to me and he's like, I don't know what to do. And I made him get more panels and everything, made sure everything was like relatively like workable. And he just had no idea how to eat, which I thought was so funny. And like I was able to work with somebody that was like, you look at this guy and you'd be terrified of him. He's like this 6'6", like 300-pound guy, all muscle. And he just had no idea how to like make a sandwich or like a salad or anything at all. I was amazed. And so it was really great to work with him. And you're talking about testosterone and that sort of thing. And there's so many things that can go wrong with the body, right? And you said endocrinology. It's kind of funny. I was looking at medical school to be a pediatric endocrinologist. And
Awesome.
if people don't know what that is, it's basically working with really obese, like 4 and 5-year-old kids. And they need all the help they can get. And it's sort of the same situation where they have no idea how to eat. A lot of the times it's poor, economic situations where the parents can't afford good food, or there's just no food around them. And once you understand like endocrinology, even at a basic level, like you can do so much more with helping people with their diet and realizing they're not sleeping enough, they're not drinking enough water, they're exercising too much. And there's just like a million things that can go wrong endocrinology wise. So it's really interesting. And I think that maybe the biggest thing would just be that I see in the paleo community a lot still is people that try to go too low carb and also do like CrossFit at the same time, which is like a recipe to like get your testosterone like so low you can't even function. And there's this thing actually called the free testosterone to cortisol ratio, and if you overtrain, which CrossFit on a very low carb diet would be overtraining, and you have no carbs, you're going to feel so out of whack and you're going to be so stressed all the time that eventually you basically just collapse. I've had those people too where they just come to you and they have no testosterone at all and they're stressed all the time. And if their lifestyle is already stressful, it's not a good idea to partake in that sort of experiment. And everybody's lifestyle I found these days is so stressful no matter what they're doing, unless they literally remove like everything except like sleep and work. And that's so rare these days with like social media, cell phones, you know how it goes. So
Yeah.
there's so much there I would love to expound on, but I want to
Yeah,
give you
no, I mean it's you brought up cortisol and free testosterone levels, and if you haven't had the chance to Google some of the clinical studies of Tonkat Ali specifically, it reduces cortisol, so you end up getting very lean midsection. You boost your free testosterone levels, and it was actually the clinical study was done on a hypogonadism patients. So it actually improved the testosterone level despite it. And that's usually hypogonadism is something that happens when you do, testosterone usually. And so it's actually able to counteract it and end up reversing it. So I've really, I actually, started giving this to some of my friends and stuff, and they've seen tremendous gains. And it's something that's all natural that really I've seen a big increase. And then you touched on, kind of doing low carb CrossFit. I think a lot of people, you're right. You look at the sedentary lifestyle of a lot of people that are preaching the low carb diet, and that's just it. They want to lose weight and they don't want to be very active. And, or if they are trying to be active, then they don't have the energy level to do it. And what I've started doing, because I do follow a low carb diet and it's a paleo one at that, I started implementing carbs directly after a workout, which is some people like to load before. I like to load right after during, like, I call it the anabolic window phase, which some people may or may not believe exists. But personally, I found that I've gotten leaner, stronger, and more defined muscle while loading like sweet potato mixed with egg whites right after that. And I'll do that directly after really intense exercises. And when I say intense, like 800 to 1,000 calorie kind of workouts. Have you done any research on that specific window? And is there a kind of opportune time to take in carbs? Because we both know low carb diets work, but I think they have to be done properly.
Yeah, I should have specified too. I meant to say very low carb diet. So I mean like ketogenic diet. I don't mean like 150 grams of carbs. I mean like 60 grams of carbs, like type like Atkins level of carbs. That's where you crash and burn when you're really trying to do like glycogen demanding work and you don't have any like carbs. It can really be bad. But yeah, it's sort of mixed as far as the anabolic window goes. Some researchers will say, yes, this definitely exists and this is how we showed it. And some will say, we're not so sure that it exists. I think what generally works really well in real life for most people is just a consistent diet. And whenever you're taking in the carbs, stick with that time, no matter what day it is. Even if you're not working out, I think for most people works pretty well, unless you want to get in and really, and some people do like to do this, where you start to maybe become more cognizant of when exactly you're eating and what exactly you're eating. But for the people I've worked with, because it's such a wide variety of people that have like really stressful jobs or like 2 or 3 kids or crazy schedules, just getting them off like processed food and just getting them to like even eat like real food, even if it's not paleo, just getting them away from like Lunchables and that sort of thing
Sure.
is really like the big win that you want to get. Even that can take like 6 months to get some people just off that stuff. And then you can start tweaking it a little bit. And I think the paleo community does sort of get lost sometimes because they just disregard all calories, and calories still definitely count, and you can't ignore like your hormonal response to food, obviously, but calories still count. And I remember some of the first people I had that I tried to do like a paleo diet with, they would just load up on like 2 jars of almond butter after 3 meals, and they're like, "Why am I not losing weight?" I'm like, "Well, if you still need to count, like I still have them like do the old school like track your calories, and
Oh my God, thank you for validating that point because I've done numerous episodes on that fact, and
right,
and people don't like to talk about calories. they will come up with all these other absurd things. And at the end of the day, as you know, it's really calories in versus calories out, because you can lose weight on even a Twinkie diet. Although you wouldn't be healthy, you could
Right.
still lose weight. And the guy went out and did it. We don't know exactly how he did it, but in theory, it can be done. And what I see is these people in the paleo industry that are actually pretty, well known, and they're selling a lot of books, is they're selling a lie. And the lie really is that, hey, you can reach your goal by consuming like maple syrup, honey, and I've had my personal family members go out and buy these people's books, and they end up gaining weight. And it's like they're out trying to lose that baby fat and stuff like that, and yet these people are giving the recipes that are setting people up for disaster. And it's like, and I personally my company and me personally, we both get attacked because I go after these people. And one of the things is like, practice what you preach. If you're going to be in a diet movement, which, paleo diet is a change in your diet, right? A change from the mainstream way of eating to a paleo one. Sure, there's autoimmune protocols and things like that where you're doing it for health, but if you're doing it to lose weight and you're out there pushing losing weight, then you need to practice what you preach. So if you are gaining weight by what you're recommending, then you probably either aren't following your own advice or you're consuming too much sugar. And it's just sad because you see it firsthand. These people are confused. And actually, I read your site, which is awesome, by the way, and so many people are dealing with confusion. You speak to that on your site because they're like, well, I thought honey, paleo cookies were going to get me to my goal.
There's so much I want to touch on there. That's like one of my pet peeve questions. So I've been really lucky to have the perspective of able to work with people directly. So like real life people, which are never ever like scientific studies, right? They're so complicated and complex, and everything's changing all the time, day to day even. And then I've been able to go into the research to an extreme level of detail. So like I know pretty much, I would feel comfortable saying almost every answer, like scientifically to some degree. But getting that in practice is so different than people that I feel like are keyboard warriors, where they just sit there and they type stuff out day after day, and they never interact with like an actual person or like train an athlete to get really close to their competitive goals, because there's so many different things you have to do, and there's so many things that can go wrong. But really all that matters is like food quality, right? At the end of the day, you could be eating whatever diet you want to call it, but all that really matters is food quality and not too many calories, basically, if you're talking about weight loss. And time. And time is the one thing that people never, ever want to give it. And that's really frustrating from somebody that's worked with clients, is like compliance and patience is so hard to find. But yeah, you're right. There's stuff. I got attacked pretty vigorously for that honey post that you mentioned particularly. And the bottom line is, if you look at the science of it, it's not very good for you, and it's mostly fructose, and your body doesn't process fructose like it processes glucose. And it's not all that complicated, actually, but you wouldn't believe the kind of feedback I got for that. That was negative. That's the only one I've ever gotten that was really negative, by the way.
Oh, man, I think I retweeted that. That was great.
I loved it because they were like, that's exactly correct. But the people that wanted to eat like cookies every day didn't,
Dr. Cordain was on our show, and he said fructose is fructose. Sure, I mean, honey is a better option, I think, in extreme moderation, because if you even think about the caveman, which I usually don't reference the caveman because we're in the modern day society, but if you were to think about how often a guy got honey, it would be few and far between, and that guy was living a long time off of what he gorged himself on, to the point where you then start thinking about intermittent fasting and how often caveman probably did intermittent fast between his meals, and that's probably one of the reasons why he was so shredded. And then you start thinking about, well, cavemen died at 35 years old. And I was like, yeah, but there was no modern medicine. It's like, I really just avoid that altogether, and to say, look, we live in today's time. And you start focusing these people that are stuck in this old way of thinking into a modern one. And how do you transition a person from a modern way of eating to a paleo one, and how do you make it easy? Now, I've seen that you've interviewed people from the Whole30, which I think is a great very extreme plan for people for 30 days. One of the problems I have with the Whole 30 is nothing wrong with the actual eating style. It's that it only sets people up for 30 days. And everybody I've talked to that's been on is like, I feel amazing. And guess what? They ended up reverting right back to the weight. They gained all the weight back, and they went right back to the way of eating. What I preach is a way to maintain paleo every day for either moms or dads that are on the go, and it gives you the foods that you're used to, without them being bad for you, without them being packed with sugar. Things like organic stevia leaf and monk fruit are now among the great, ingredients that we get to choose upon. And it's like people are fighting it. It's like, why are you fighting something that is like, it's good for you, And it's like, and then people start getting it confused with sucralose or Splenda. It's like, oh my God, we have such a great array of ingredients nowadays that we never used to have, and it makes eating a healthy, I would say a healthy carb, kind of a healthy low carb diet very easy. What is your take on the ketogenic diet and matching that with paleo? Because personally, I love being in a ketogenic, like kind of fat burning mode constantly. And outside of the anabolic window, I wouldn't consume carbs that would spike my blood sugar outside of that window. And when I do, it's strictly sweet potato or resistant starch, like, something like that. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and there's so much there. So firstly, I have to say that it's really been awesome to write for Dr. Cordain. It's a really big opportunity. There is definitely stuff that I would disagree with him on, but I tend to think maybe I don't even use the word paleo very much. I don't have it in my title of my site or anything like that. I really just tell people to eat real food, right? Because at the end of the day, getting them away from like McDonald's and processed food is really what you want to be doing. And then, so like I would direct people to Matt Lalonde. I don't know if everybody knows him. He's a PhD at Harvard University in organic chemistry, and he doesn't have a book. He doesn't have a website. He doesn't have anything really to sell. And he just gives you, I mean, some people would say it's a really too detailed scientific analysis, but he'll just say, like, these are the foods that will probably work best for you. Here's what you should probably do. It's not going to work for everybody, but, you have to figure it out for yourself. But here's, like, a pretty good starting place. And he's a really good guy that I think a lot of people should start referencing or looking to. I know some people do. Rob Wolf obviously does, and Rob's awesome, too. But then for the whole 30, I guess to the roundabout way to get to that would be you have to meet people where they're at, right? So some people, if they have a history of like disordered eating, should stay very far away from stuff where it's really restrictive because it can sometimes worsen the problem. That being said, some people do really well on a whole 30 that used to be, really bad with eating disorders. So it's a very much like N equals one. You have to figure out where the person is, what their history is, what other stressors do they have in their life, what kind of personality do they have. It's one of those situations where you really do want to work with somebody one-on-one for the most part.
Yeah.
Like you said, one other thing I'll have to tell you from having been in the nutrition world, like in a big sense for like just over a year now, is that people are so silly with some of the stuff that they argue about, and it blows my mind on like a regular basis. Like I remember thinking when I was working only with clients all day, I'm like, I never got any of these questions. This is insane. Like these people are debating about stuff. It doesn't matter at all. Like,
Right.
so it is kind of annoying. I would have to say from time to time, like I don't spend very much time on social media just because I can't really stand a lot of it. I know it probably helped my business and all that, but it just feels like people are arguing about things that don't really matter at the end of the day. And the ketogenic diet, to get to that question, I've seen some people do really well with it. I've also seen some people totally destroy themselves on it. So it's very much like individualistic. People that have a really hard time with sugar, if you can get them to actually like follow really good, like well thought out, well tracked by like a medical professional ketogenic diet, and they feel okay doing it, they usually see like pretty incredible turnaround. But there's also like long-term questions. I got to interview Dr. Perlmutter when his book came out last year, and I kind of asked around like to my friends. Melissa Hartwig was one of them, and I said, "What do you want me to ask him? Like, what do you think would be a good question to ask him because it was one of my first interviews and I really had no idea what people wanted to see. I know what I wanted to see, but it wasn't necessarily what would be like the general question. And everybody across the board said, how do you do this kind of diet for an athlete? I don't think it's really maintainable in the long term. And he kind of just danced around it. And actually, he's a really cool guy. And like, it was a really nice interview, but he definitely didn't have an answer to that question. So I would say the ketogenic diet, you have to be very careful. If you want to be somebody that's doing a lot of glycogen dependent activity, or you have a pretty high stress lifestyle, or you don't have time to adapt to like a 5 or 6 day period of just feeling really kind of not great, I'd be careful with it because you can definitely screw yourself up like a lot of different ways with the ketogenic diet. If you have like micronutrient deficiencies, if you're not getting enough vitamins and minerals somehow, like a lot of people do it after getting really psyched about reading like a blog post and then they destroy themselves like 3 months later and they come to me and they have like no cortisol, they have no testosterone, they're just like terribly across the board, like shredded out and like terrible. So, not shredded out in like the Arnold way.
Well, I
So,
think that's the problem is there's another area of confusion where people are consuming too many calories, way too much fat above and beyond what they need to, and then there again you have people that are preaching ketogenic and yet they're gaining weight on it, and these are the authors of this movement. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. Like
right.
there is a limit, and in nature, you really don't see anything with more than 50% fat anyway. So. That being said, I've really gone on to the premise where I do follow a paleo diet, like from an allergy point of view, from an anti-inflammation point of view. But even in my own diet, just to regulate my leanness, I adjust my fat level, and I do this because bodybuilding 101 states before a show, what do you cut out? You cut out the fat, and it shreds a tremendous amount of weight from your body, and all of a sudden you become defined and lean. And it's almost like I don't really do intermittent fasting, but following a low carb, low fat diet really leaves you with fiber and high protein and carbs from vegetables. So all of a sudden your calories drop way down, your protein and fiber increase, fiber there to curb your appetite, and the protein to actually will still give you the energy you need. I've actually gone to a 3-day like paleo low carb low fat diet followed by a 4-day kind of higher fat version, and I never have to think about weight again. And I feel great. And I'm constantly revving my metabolism by doing this because I'm not inundating my body with too much fat or too many calories. What do you think of that approach?
Uh, there's a lot going on there. So you're definitely right in the traditional sense that bodybuilders would always do like a cutting phase right before a show, that sort of thing. And what I could tell you just from working and having friends that are bodybuilders too is like they have some of the worst eating patterns across the board. Like in general, there's so many issues with food. Not that they don't admire what they're doing because that's really amazing dedication and that sort of thing, but
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I've seen crazy quote unquote refeed days where it's like 40,000 calories and it's like pizza and like all kinds of stuff. So, like, for the general client, I guess I'd sort of steer them towards like, basically, what I was going to say too is like more vegetables and you're not eating nearly enough protein. You're definitely not eating enough complete proteins. You're eating like chickpeas, which aren't really, I mean, some vegetarian people will say it's a complete protein. It's really not if you look at the data. And that's like the best protein they're getting. And it's like 16 grams a day or something. And it's like, first of all, the reason you're probably overeating is because you're getting like no protein at all. So you're not going to feel satiated. And you're eating no vegetables or fiber. So of course you're not going to feel full. So they end up eating like 3 boxes of Cheez-Its and they're like, I'm still hungry. And then now I'm also like malnourished. And I'm like, I'm not surprised because you're eating like nothing. So across the board, that's what I see, like not nearly enough protein, not nearly enough vegetables. And all the data, by the way, I later found out backs all that up, what I was seeing like anecdotally from working with people. So
Well,
for the
just in terms of the concept, though, of you got to give it to bodybuilders. Now, given they have, a lot of horrible eating patterns, and I don't really believe in, you have to bulk up that much and all that they do. But I think the concept of dropping the fat to drop weight quickly can be applied to the paleo diet or one that is looking to lose weight, specifically while increasing protein. Go ahead.
Did you mean dropping fat or dropping
No,
carbs?
dropping fat because
Hmm.
you're dropping. So before a bodybuilding competition, what do all these guys do? They start eating egg whites, they eat chicken, and they eat
Oh,
vegetables.
you mean like the 80s dropping fat thing? Yeah. Okay, I'm with you
So,
now.
and they're doing that to why? Drop their calories, which in turn drops the fat. And it drops it fast, too. So, what I started doing was playing around with this 3 days of a low carb, low fat diet, high protein, high fiber, still no sugar, and followed by just a regular paleo diet with regular amounts of fat, but still keeping the sugar low. And I've just noticed a tremendous improvement in my metabolism. I really never have to think about gaining weight or my weight at all, and I maintain a six pack year round by eating in the style. And it was simply from that concept of dropping the fat and why they do it. And once again, it goes into that calories in, calories out, and it works. Guess what? Every single time. But and I feel great during the day. I have, when I talk about protein, about 190 pounds right now, so I'm taking in 2+ grams of protein per pound that I weigh. And I'll do that through protein powders, chicken, steak. I like to rotate my proteins. Um, have you played around with that at all by dropping the fat levels to basically drive somebody to like a weight loss goal?
It depends. Usually for weight loss, you see dropping the carbs is a lot more effective as long as you don't drop them too low. And again, like you said, ultimately it's really just getting them off sugar or as low as you can with sugar, maybe like a piece of fruit or something. But that's such a struggle for most people, but they'll drop, really quickly that way. Low fat, I've only seen, like you said, with bodybuilders where they're really dedicated and able to control their diet really well and are very disciplined already. So for them, it's like you said, not much of a change and they can easily stick with it. But for most actual people that are like not bodybuilders, oh man, I think it would be extremely difficult for them because usually what's lacking is like a focus on like steady, disciplined habits with eating, right? So it's very tough. Usually, I recommend for those people just to go lower sugar, by proxy, lower carb, and just getting some healthy fats in there. Usually, people are lacking in healthy fats like almost completely too. Not only deficient in protein and too many carbs when not nearly enough healthy fats. They don't even know what healthy fats are sometimes, depending on who the person I'm starting with is. So, in the brain is what, 60% fat, 70% fat. I can't remember the exact percentage, but you need a decent amount of fat just to keep things going. And cholesterol. People worry about cholesterol, but it's actually if you're eating really healthy fats like eggs and that sort of thing, you're going to do fine. And dietary cholesterol has very little to do with the serum cholesterol. So there's so many like misnomers I'm constantly fighting on a daily basis with people, and they have bad information or incomplete information, and it's a struggle when you're working with real people. It honestly is. So, but
Yeah.
bodybuilders are some of the best clients I've ever had because they'll do exactly what you tell them to do, and they'll be very interested in knowing why it works, and they'll listen to you go on about the most minute detail in the world, and they're very receptive. And I just worry sometimes because some of them are like super into it and they're not professionals. They're like going to be amateur or whatever. And that's really great. But I just worry. I'm like, go outside and like do something fun for a while. Like it's okay. Like you can have 2 chicken breasts or 7 almonds instead of 6. It's all right. Like, so, that's what
Well,
I've seen.
I mean, as a person busy as I am and having a daughter and everything that I got going on in my life, it's
Yeah.
really about when I go in to train and work out. And I think I'm like a lot of people. How can I get the maximum benefit from my workout? And one of the ways is keeping your estrogen low, your testosterone high naturally, if at all possible, and following this kind of paleo approach that is lowering carbs or consuming the carbs in the proper time frame. So that way, when you do work out, you actually see the results. Because so many people year after year are working out and they never see the results. And they're eating, so they're working out so they can eat what they want. And I'm sure you see a lot of that. And they're just it's constantly stuck in the circle. And it's like they have no idea how good they could really feel.
That's what I think we were talking about the Whole 30 earlier, and there's definitely things that are somewhat not great about approaches like that. But what I think is amazing for a lot of people is that they, like you said, they don't realize what they're missing out on until they get to like day 13 or something, and they're like, "Oh my God, I feel incredible! I haven't felt like this since I was like 12 years old or something." And like you said, we go back to endocrinology. Their hormones are usually so far out of whack. Their stress is so high, And like you said, also, a lot of the time you only have 20, 30 minutes to get a workout in, and you have to get the most you can out of it. So um, I think if people just refocus a lot of their discipline onto like just getting a good diet going and like stuck with it for a month and like didn't worry too much about the details or like falling off the wagon once or twice, they would start to feel a lot better. And there's really nothing to obsess about in that approach. And then they could start to fine tune it if they wanted to. But a lot of the times people just want to feel better and, like you said, lose a little bit of weight. And so many people are stuck in like the I need to lose 10 pounds thing where they'll lose it and then 2 weeks later they'll gain it back and it just sort of repeats for the rest of their life. And they just have no idea how to actually lose it like steadily but slowly and really in like a healthy way where you're gaining muscle and losing fat. In the long term, you're able to stay with it. So yeah, there's just so much there is that can go wrong, and a lot of it's advertising too, like advertising of like hyper palatable foods, right? So this is a fun thing I have people do all the time. Count how many times, if you drive to work, some people don't drive to work anymore, they bike or whatever, but count how many times you see an ad for a fast food, a processed food, or soda on the way to work. And I guarantee you, if you have to drive more than 10 or 20 minutes, it's going to be like over 100 times just on your way to work, to and from work every day.
Oh yeah.
So but there's no ads for like spinach, there's no ads for like kale, there's no ads for broccoli. And people are usually pretty blown away by that. They're like, I never thought of it like that. I'm like, well, duh. Like, what do you think's going on? Like,
Oh,
so,
it's so bad. I mean, I recently just went to SeaWorld and Legoland, and it's like they have nothing. Like you walk into the market and they have chocolate covered marshmallows, right? Like the first thing was sprinkles on it for your kids. So of course they want that first. And it's like they're not even trying. I mean, there's really no options there, and it's like you're forced to eat this unhealthy food. And so much of the food, really is packed with antibiotics. And I started doing a lot of research on basically enzymes and our gut health and how important it is, especially as we age, to really improve our enzyme consumption, our probiotics as we age, because so many people, let's face it, everybody drinks maybe, once a week. Sometimes people drink a lot more, or even it's every now and then, or maybe they used to drink a lot in the past. So drinking is just a part of society, and it's going to be there. But as we age, what we're really doing is we're killing off those good bacteria in our stomach. And what I found was by replacing them and really, taking like an HCl betaine, I have this HCl activator, which really helps break down even more, and then followed by some enzymes. I use apple cider vinegar sometimes, Swedish bitters even, and I've paid special attention to my digestion. I've noticed more definition in my six-pack. I've noticed more energy. And instead of using like a colon cleanse and stuff like that to constantly flush stuff out, which a lot of people do, they're not actually digesting their food. They're not getting the energy out of it. And that's when you notice that you're not seeing any sort of definition in your muscles because they're not digesting. So I read a couple of your articles on digestion, and you talked about apple cider vinegar and also HCl betaine. And I had an issue where before I read your article, even I had too much acid, and for whatever reason, I started taking HCl betaine mixed with a digestive, and it went away. And I had been using apple cider vinegar up until that point, and it was kind of working, but nothing worked as good as the HCl betaine, which is, you would think you're actually adding more acid into the equation, but you're really not.
yeah, it's interesting how that works.
Can you speak to digestion overall and kind of, I think it's a real way to kind of increase your metabolism, and it's something that a lot of people don't even think about. You have any thoughts on that?
Oh, sure. There's so much there. So firstly, I have to give credit to Rob Wolf for the discovery of the betaine hydrochloride. This is way back when I got introduced to the paleo concept. I literally just went through every single podcast, and I think I even read the transcripts for some because I liked reading it instead of hearing it. Because Rob kind of goes off on tangents, which are entertaining, but you can get lost in what he's actually saying. So I remember reading that, and I had never heard of it before, and I was like, "That's interesting. Let me try it with myself." And it definitely improved my digestion. It's really easy to recommend to anybody. It's not very expensive, which is really also a nice thing for people. But the gut actually has become it's sort of like the trendy thing in paleo, right? In 2015 is like the gut microbiome, all that stuff. And there's so much research that's already been there for like 10 or 15 years that people just haven't paid attention to. But if you talk to scientists, they've been discovering this stuff since at least like 2000, and how much the gut can actually affect your mood, your thinking, your appetite, depression, all kinds of things. So all of it's there. And what's interesting, I guess, to most people is that you can literally change what you want to eat, how hungry you are, what foods you'll crave, whether or not your body can process calories more efficiently or not, just by changing your gut population, right? So probiotic is by far the most widely recommended thing I tell people to take when I first start working with them, because usually they've had a lifetime of antibiotics, right? And broad spectrum antibiotics too, where they're just killing everything indiscriminately. So you're killing off all the good stuff too. You do that for 20, 30 years, of course you're going to have like no good gut population of bacteria left, because what are you eating that's going to repopulate it? No one's eating sauerkraut on a daily basis like they should be. I know because I'm talking to them. Um, so it's one of the things that really turns people around really quickly a lot of the times. And I actually have a relative with Crohn's disease, and I have been begging her for months, like probably years at this point, just try like 30 days, do like a whole 30, whatever, and you have to follow it a little bit more closely because you have an autoimmune disease, and take like a probiotic. And she just won't do it for some reason that blows my mind. And I'm seeing her gain weight. I'm seeing her on all these medications that are terrible. And it's just, your family's the hardest to convince, right? So, but yeah, I think in like 10 years it'll just be common sense in like the scientific community, and you're sort of seeing that go from like fringe, this could be quackery, to like obviously this has some benefits, to like standard accepted practice in like 10 years, I would say. So, but the gut health stuff is really incredible, and I wish I had all the time in the world to read all the papers that come out every day nowadays. Like it used to be once in a while you get a really good paper and like there'd be like a 3 month wait, and now the gut stuff it's like every day and like a mind blowing paper comes out. I get to read the abstract and that's it. But yeah, it's really cool stuff. And digestion's a thing where people don't even know that they have poor digestion a lot of the time until they correct it. So yeah.
It is very trending right now, and in fact we've started to infuse like probiotics into our protein powders. Like our protein bars have prebiotic fiber, so all ways to keep your stomach really healthy, because I think it is truly the key to optimal health. So it's very interesting. So I want to encourage everybody to go to your site, eatcleantrainclean.com, and you have a great just all sorts of different articles on all sorts of different topics. Very cool site. When do your books come out?
Well, I just got the covers back from the designer in San Francisco for one of them. I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. We're still going back and forth on the title, but it could be called the Complete Bone Broth Cookbook. There's 10 chapters of all the science for bone broth, and then 50 amazing recipes for that one.
Awesome.
So that's going to be like in 2 or 3 weeks, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, etc. And then Paleo Hacks actually commissioned me to write 2 different books that have been done for a while now, but all the editors have to go in, and designers, all that fun stuff. So it's going to be, one of them is actually a 30-day fat loss program, which everybody listening to this would probably be interested in. And the other one's Paleo Cures, so it's like a chapter on a condition and how to fix it. Like if you have thyroid problems, there's a whole chapter on how to fix that. If you have blood sugar issues, there's a whole chapter on that. And then the fourth one is one I've had done for a year, but it's at Rodale Publishing right now. They're seeing if they want to buy it. They do men's health, women's health, all that stuff. And it's on why we're fat. So it's like 10 chapters of what we just talked about in great scientific detail, like 500 scientific references and all that stuff. So very soon is the answer to your question. Hopefully within like a month or 2 for most of them. So.
Yeah, that's one thing I like about your articles is that you always use great graphics, and you make things very easy and simple for people to follow. So you're not really, going too far off, but you're backing it by actual evidence, and that way people get really good results. So.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like I'm a bridge, right? So like the science people are here and they can't talk to the public, and the public doesn't understand science. So I'm like the middle ground to like get the science to the people. And like you said, like everybody loves graphics, and like if people want more information, they can always go look up the references. So,
Yeah.
But that's really nice to hear that. Thank you for that compliment. So.
No problem. Well, just want to thank you so much for coming on. For all of our followers and new followers, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Keep up to date on all of our upcoming videos. We're going to be launching our first ad in Paleo Magazine, I think, in a couple of months for the show. Very excited. So Very cool. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Sure, no problem.
Oops. Let's see.